All right. Hey, good Thursday morning to you. It's man, weeks just fly by, don't they? And we are in the last section of this Gospel of John, and I tell you all the time, it makes me sad when we get to the end. I mean, I like having conquered, a text. It's been 92 teachings. Today will be the 92nd one we've had in John. That's a long time to spend there. If we were just Sunday morning folk, man, we'd be, that's like almost 2 years worth we would have lingered in here. But man, I'm just sad. I love looking at this. There's a comfort. It's what happens when you get to the end of a book. A good novel. It's like, man, I didn't want it to end. I want to keep going, right? And that's what this is. And so, only this isn't a novel. This is a novel in one sense that it is unique. It is a novel in one sense in that it is It is a story, but make no mistake, this is God, very God, having breathed his words into men who wrote as the Spirit uttered. And so what we're reading is not just John's words. It's John's words inspired by the Spirit of the living God, whom he saw in the flesh and then had within him until the day he breathed his last breath. And so when we open up the book of John, it's like nothing else, not just John, but all of the sacred texts. But we open this up and we read it having been translated for us from either the Aramaic or the Hebrew or the Greek into what you and I are reading. This is a gift from God himself. And so enough about that. I've just Tammy and I were having lengthy conversations this morning just about life and our heart for people to be confident that they're believers, not in false things, but in the true things, and it's always found within the pages of scriptures. And so here we are, John chapter 21, verse 15. And let's just rock this and look at some truth. So this is the final scene that John gives us, and John really has given us a greater understanding of actually the words that Jesus said than any of the others after the resurrection. So this is the third time that the disciples have seen Jesus, and this is a continuation. So the first time that they encountered Jesus that we are aware of in this deal is right after the Sunday evening after the resurrection. And then 8 days later, they meet him again. He walks through the wall, so to speak, shows them, pronounces peace to them, lets them touch his risen and resurrected body. And then a season went by after these things. Now, he's only here for 40 days. So 8 of them have already been used. So there's 32 left. And so we don't know how long it was between when he's told them to go to Galilee and this encounter. Long enough that we said that Peter may have gotten a little antsy. He hasn't really had that encounter with Jesus by himself, not from any record that we have. It was just this quick encounter. Now, we do know that Luke says that he had a personal visit with Peter as well. But I think that may have been this one that we're going to look at. Not so much like, an encounter somewhere previous to this. It's just my understanding as I've kind of saturated myself with this. So Peter goes, "Hey, I'm going fishing, right? I can't just sit up here in the mountains, man. I'm going fishing." So he goes down, gets in the boat, and he had his other men that said, "Hey, then we're going to," right? So they're out fishing. We looked at this yesterday. I'm just reminding you for those who may not have seen. Man shows up on the beach. He hollers at them because they've caught nothing. He's having casting nets on the other side. That's where the fish are. They do it instinctively. When John feels the weight of the nets, he looks at Peter and goes, "That's the Lord." Peter puts his outer garment on, just heaves himself into the water, belly flops himself, and then makes his way to the shore. And by the time he gets there, the others are getting there. Jesus already has fish and bread and a fire going, and he says, "Hey man, why don't you guys bring some of the fish that you caught?" I mean, it's like, We didn't even see you catch fish, Jesus. And so it sits down. No one had to ask, hey, is this the Lord? For they all knew that it was the Lord. And so they're sitting at this fire, having breakfast, and that brings us to this conversation. Now, Peter and Jesus haven't had a conversation that we know of yet. This is the first encounter after their eyes had met each other. Now, we do know that Peter was in the room twice when Jesus came in, but so were all the others. And so I'm sure at some point Peter's like, hey, man, I kind of like to have a conversation with Jesus. Little did he know that Jesus was going to drag him into that conversation in somewhat of a public fashion. And I think there's several reasons behind that. But let's just look at this. If these men that are sitting by this fire, and at this point, not all of the disciples are here. Remember, we looked at that. I can't remember the total number. You can go back and look. It was Jesus and Doubting Thomas, and it was Nathaniel, and it was well, I'm not going to waste time with that. They weren't the normal crowd. Now, so it says this, verse 15. Now, when they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter. So they're all sitting there, Simon Peter and all the others. And listen, Jesus is getting ready to teach them a principle about what it means to deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow him. He knows that in the condition that these men are in, they just need a good reminder. And these are the ones, if they're going to change the world and bring the good news, it's going to require a next level commitment in that sense. They've all demonstrated a little slowness, a little scattering. John was the only one that really stood with Jesus at the crucifixion. Peter always bites off more than he can chew. I'll never do that. They'll never do that to you. This won't happen. I'm going to follow you to the death. I'm not going to deny you, right? He's always, and I believe he genuinely thought that. I think a lot of us have that mindset of thinking that we really are more in and more committed than I think that we realize we are in a lot of areas. And we make those statements. So here they are at breakfast, and he's going to remind them of three things that if we're gonna succeed, you need to love. It's got to be that's the motivation. And he said that over and over and over again. I'm going to remind you in just a minute. There's going to have to be sacrifice. You got to be willing to pick up that cross. That you got to be willing to know, hey, this probably won't end well for me. And then there has to be sheer obedience. And once you have decided that your relationship is based on love, you're all in for the long haul, till death do us part, right? I mean, that's what it means to be in marriage. That's the sacrifice aspect of things. No matter how hard it gets, we're in this thing till death do us part. And so then you're going to do the right thing based on those two things. Because one, you love them. Two, you made a commitment that you would do that for the long haul. That means that what you do isn't dependent on what your mate does. It's only dependent on the fact that you have two anchors. You love them and you willingly will sacrifice no matter what for them. And so this is the same call Jesus is giving to his bride, so to speak, these men. So love is the key. It starts there, right? John 5, remember way back when he says, greater love has no one than this, that he will lay down his life for his friends. So he's already set the bar. That's genuine love. There's no greater love than someone willing to die for you. That's what he's saying. Now, he could refer to himself because he did that, and that is what he was referring to there. But it also is in this situation, it could be referring to the fact that, hey, you need to get to that place. 1 Corinthians 13, right, reminds us that if I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but I have not love, right, I'm just making noise. If I have the gift of prophecy and I can, prophesy everything, if I have not love, it means nothing. If I have the gift of move mountains, but I don't have love, it's nothing. If I give all my possessions to the poor, it's nothing if I don't have love. The great Shema, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. You shall love your neighbor as yourself, right? That great Shema is a foundation of everything in the Hebrew and in our Christian culture. John 14, we had looked at that, right? If you love me, he says, you will keep my commandments. You'll obey me. So these are the things. So he gets to Simon Peter. They've had breakfast. Peter's got to be excited. I mean, he just belly flopped into the water, and it says threw himself, and literally that's what it means, like you would cast a net. So he just belly flops himself into the water, makes it there, sits down. Jesus is having breakfast. When they finish the fish and the bread and whatever else that they were eating there, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John. Now he's called, Jesus I think referred to him as Simon Peter couple of other times, but this is almost like, hey, we're back to square one. Peter, I'm not calling you Rock like I did in the past. I'm calling you Simon, your name before I gave you that one. It's interesting to me that he's going back to that. I think he's just saying, hey, let's go back to square one. Like Rock Newton in the famous football, when he started working at Notre Dame, hey, this is a football. We're going to start here. This is kind of Jesus saying, hey, let's go back to the beginning. And so he says this, do you agape me more than these? Do you have a divine love? That you and I know there's several forms of love, right? There's agape, there's phileo, there's eros, there's all sorts of different kinds of love. This is the highest form of love there is. And he looks at Simon, and he says, Simon, do you have a divine love, an internal love that is beyond comprehension for me, more than these? Now, these, is he talking about those sitting around the circle? Or is he talking about the bones of the fish that they just ate and the nets that are laying by the side and the boat that's over there? We have to assume it could be all of that. He's simply saying, do you love me more than your fishing industry, right? Do you love me more than that business thing there? And he's saying, which is what Peter thought was his call early on. Or do you love me divinely more than you have a love for these men? And that's a serious question that he's asking there. And so Peter answers, oh, Lord, you know I brotherly love you. So Peter uses the word phileo. You know I brotherly love you. Now, why did he not say, I agape you? I think because he's still living with those denials. He knows that if he said that, yeah, sure, I love you more than everything, Jesus' next line might have been, then why did you deny me 3 times, right? And so I think there's this, I'm coming clean. Lord, you know, if I say I love you agape, you know that. I believe this is what's going on. And I believe this is the method that Jesus is using just to have this interaction. He's like, let's just get down to the nitty gritty. Do you really love me? I mean, like, love you always over the top. I'm just asking you, do you love me over the top? That's what you have said time and time again, Simon. I think if he said agape, Jesus might call him out on his denial. So he says, hey man, I phileo you. Yes, Lord, I phileo you. And Jesus says, good, I want you to tend to my lambs. I want you to take care of my babies. Now, those are young, right? So he would assume he's meaning the young followers, not young in age, but young in those that are kind of the tail end kind of people, not the original 12, but the 120 that are going to be in that upper room, right? And so he's saying that then I want you to care for them. That's good word. He just smacked him and asked, hey, where's your commitment? And Peter didn't give it the highest commitment, but Jesus still looks at him and says, you're in charge, man. I need you to take care of the sheep, of the lambs. So then he says, and again, Simon, son of John, do you agape me? He said to him, yes, Lord, you know I phileo you. You know I do. And he says, I want you to shepherd my sheep. That's all of those. right? So now he said, I want the men sitting in that circle, those are his sheep too. Now he's up the game. Still, Peter didn't come up to the level of the love that he wanted. But obviously Jesus knew all of that. And so he says, then I want you to shepherd my sheep. I want you to lead, not just feed. Tend means to feed. Shepherd means to care for, right? To lead, not just feed, but feed and lead. I want you to lead my people. I want you to lead all of them. Wow. Okay. Now, then Peter says to him again. Jesus says to him again. He said to him a third time, Simon, son of John, do you really brotherly love me? Now, Jesus just lowered the standard. Why did he do that? Because a brother is willing to lay down his life for a friend. And Jesus is lowering the standard because he's saying, do you even love me like that? This is why it says Peter was hurt when he said that. He's like, oh, Lord, I've got this denial thing, and so agape, I don't know. Now you're even challenging whether I brotherly love you? And it hurt him, it says. Lord, you know all things. You know I love you. You know I phileo you. And Jesus said to him, then I want you to tend to my sheep. I want you to feed my sheep. I love this encounter because there's a raw honesty that Jesus isn't denying. He's not a normalizer. Oh, Peter, forget the denial thing. We all struggle. He didn't do that. He wanted this interaction to get to the heart of who Peter was. It wasn't just enough for anything else to happen. He wanted Peter to reveal his heart and to examine his heart. And this is what's going on. And this is what every great counselor, this is what all of us are called to do in our own life and the lives of others. Now, we're not going to get through this if I don't hurry. And so then he does this in verse 18. Truly, and we're still sitting around the fire. He's just talked about love. Now he talks about sacrifice. Truly, truly, I tell you, when you were younger, Simon, when you were younger, you used to put on your belt and walk wherever you wanted. When you grow old, you'll stretch out your hands and someone else will put your belt on you and bring you where you don't want to go. Hey, Peter, right now you thinking you got the world by the tail, man. When you were younger, you did that. There's going to come a time as you're tending to my sheep, there's going to come a time when you won't get to do what you think you ought to do. Other people are going to stretch you out. And by that, he means, Peter, you're going to die for me. This is it's plain because that's what the text says. Verse 19, now he said this indicating by what kind of death he would glorify God. When he said this to him, he said, follow me. He said, all right, you love me? You say you love me. I got it. And I know you love me. You're going to sacrifice. There's going to be sacrifice. You are going to pick up your cross and it is going to be put into the ground and you are going to be attached to it and you will die that way. There is a sacrifice. And then he says this, hey, follow me. Because at this point, Peter could go, I think I'm out of here again. Is Peter looking for the exit like he did, back at the campfire that wasn't at the beach, but it was the one in the garden, not the garden, but the outer court where Jesus is being tried. So he gets up to follow him. And then just like he did walking on the water, he looks around and he begins to see everything else and he loses sight of him. And so he does it again here. The one who has following them, disciples Jesus love following them. Peter turned around. So Jesus said, follow me. Okay, so he gets up. And he looks back and he goes, wait a minute, John's getting up too. Peter turned around and saw the disciple whom Jesus loved following them. The one who also leaned back on his chest at the supper and said, Lord, who is the one who is betraying you? So Peter, upon seeing this, said to Jesus, Lord, what about him? Right? And so Jesus makes it plain here. He says, if I want him to remain until I come, what is that to you? What is that to you? Follow me. He's saying, hey, Peter, don't worry about anybody else's life. Now, Let's read the text. It said, therefore, on this account went out among the brothers that disciple would not die. Jesus did not say to him he would not die, but only if I want him to remain until I come. What is that to you? This is John writing is almost like a 90-year-old man going, hey, some of you may think I'm going to live forever. I am still going to die, right? And so this is him doing that. But listen, what's the point here? Peter, follow me. Quit looking at what everybody else is doing. It's you and me, brother. I ask you to tend to my sheep. I ask you to feed my sheep. I want you to follow me. And so there is this love, sacrifice, obedience. Then we finish with this in verse 24. This is the disciple who is testifying about these things and wrote these things, and we know this test. The disciple who is following me, said, is me. And I wrote these things down, what I saw, all of it, I wrote it, and my testimony is true. I love that. And then he says this, and I could go on, verse 25. But there are also many other things which Jesus said, which if they were written in detail, I expect the whole world couldn't contain the library therein. And that's how this glorious book ends. Man, what a great study. Lord bless you guys. I'll see you Monday morning. We're going to crack open another one of John's. And so we'll see you then.